What's up, Chicago sports? I'm in the building with a very special guest, Nomad, and we are very excited and blessed to have you. And thank you for joining us on this Feel Good Friday, TGIF. This is just coming off of turn, so I work nights, and now I get to, when I work nights, I get to have these early morning podcasts, and I'm very blessed and honored to have Nomad on. I've been watching him. I was deep in the cut for a little bit, just kind of checking him out and seeing what he had. And man, I'm a believer. It's great, and I'm actually very surprised that he answered the bell so early. So without further ado, hey Nomad, welcome to Chicago Sports Podcast Show.
Hey, Brandon, I appreciate you for having me on. I'm always down to join someone that talks some Bears football. And man, I appreciate you so much for having me on and those kind words you just gave me.
Oh yeah, man. And you know what? It's hard to find, and no disrespect to anybody out there, and I'm not pointing the finger at anyone, but it is hard to find a level-headed person that can talk sports. And here's why: once you become a content creator, you think differently. As a fan, you go all in on one particular thing, whatever you're a big fan of. But as a creator, you have to talk both sides and bring it all out there. And there's some sides that I don't even agree with, but I still got to bring it up, put it out on the table, because some of you might actually digest it different than me. At the end of the day, you know where our heart is and where we're at and all that. So so let's get into it. Today we want to talk about the departure of Cody Whitehair and Bo Jackson. I mean, I was really excited when he first came in from Alabama. You know, I felt really good coming from, you know, the Alabama tree and what they create. I mean, they're almost instant, and it feels like, and you look at them, the sizes of these guys that play, they've got 3 or 4 games going on all at once in practices and stuff. I mean, they're almost potentially NFL ready, Nomad. And when he came to us, I was very excited. And, you know, Cody, along with that, Cody was like the, you know, the Swiss Army knife, you know, the plug and play here, plug and play there. I mean, he didn't really play so hot as a center, but he, you know, he did what was asked, and very serviceable. And in my mind, up until now, Tevin Jenkins, he's kind of like, I'll put a pin in Tevin because it's hard to keep him healthy. When healthy, I think he's potentially the best lineman that we got, because, you know, Wright is still ramping up. You know, as a rookie, he did really good. But I mean, again, until we drafted Wright, I really felt, and this is not saying much, you know, Nomad, that Cody Whitehair was our best veteran on the team, you know. So, I mean, what were your thoughts when you heard that those two veterans were leaving the building?
Well, I had a lot of different thoughts because we've been talking about that on the network for quite a while. Let's just start with Cody.
Okay.
And just to let you know ahead of time, you know, me being a former player, I'm pro player. You know what I mean? I'm going to always, the comments you hear me say, it's going to always lean towards trying to support the player, you know, because
Right.
in my opinion, I think if there was a world that they could have kept both of those guys in a way that was financially feasible, which
Right.
could end up being, you know, I seriously doubt it. It's an option down the road once they touch free agency and get a gauge for what their price and their market may be. Especially, I think Eddie more so than Cody. Why I say that is because Eddie was pretty much the glue. You know, being a locker room person like I am, man, I think about, you know, the kind of stuff that I know that goes on off the field and the kind of guy Eddie is and the glue guy that he is, that pretty much kind of kept, you know, everybody kind of hung out at Bojack's crib. You know, when they weren't on the field practicing and working out and doing things they had to do at Alice Hall, they were at Bojack's house. That's well known. And you remove a guy like that from a team, and immediately you're gonna have a sense of a void being there. And so in my mind, I saw it coming, but I was hoping that they would get him to the table, come to terms with some kind of team friendly contract that would keep him in Chicago and keep everybody glued in. Because I don't know if people realize how important guys like that are to the locker room and your chemistry and just keeping continuity. Now, that's just how I feel about. I also do feel that it's Jaquan Brisker's time to step up and play that role. It's also Jalen Johnson's time to step up and play that role. And
Right.
so, he's getting ready to get a big money contract likely. But Cody, I mean, he is the best veteran that we have, hands down. I mean, he's the best veteran that we had. Nobody has more skin in the game than Cody on that team. And some people like to surmise that he's lost a step or he's going down a little bit. I don't know if I see that. I think I see more. He's been juggled around a little bit too much, and technically from one side to the other, that it's a different ball game. He's learned to adjust to it, being on one side or the other, and having to change the technique and the stance that you have to deal with on one side or the other, and then playing center. I think he's a victim of circumstances more than anything. He just has a hell of an expensive contract for the situation that we in, and you have Tyree Carters of the world that they probably feel like is ready to step up and play a role on this rotation. So. I feel I hate to see him going. I'm never going to be the guy that's going to kick someone in the crotch on the way out of the door. I don't believe in doing that. I think some fan just did that on Twitter just a minute before I came into your show, and it kind of pissed me off. I hate that. But that's how I feel about both of those situations.
Yeah, and I agree with you too about Cody Whitehair. I thought he was very good at guard. I was a little shocked that, now hear me out, that everybody knows on record on my show that I'm all about polls. I'm all about Kevin Warren, and polls I trust. And you can actually see, if you look behind us, the wallpaper that I have there, who's got the rock there, who's throwing the ball, right? So you could see what we're about. But the thing of it is those guys, and this is what I like the most about. I'm going to circle back. I'm on track, but I'm going to it's going to take a little while to get there. So Ryan, as you know, offensive lineman, NFL, right? Ian Cunningham, offensive lineman, NFL. And this is what I like about Ryan really quick. He went and told the Bears brass, hey, if it's going to be my ass, you're going to do it my way. And what I need right now in the history of ever is a first assistant GM. And I'm pretty sure the Bears were like, you mean we got to spend some more money? Because they're always penny pinching and all that, and he's, hey, man, let me do what I do. And you see how quickly people are admiring Ian. I mean, they want them to run the ship for their teams. And I was just, we're blessed to have him another year in the building, and hopefully we can continue this on and whatnot. And, we'll see what happens with all of that. But getting back to that offensive line, I don't know why. I can't understand why. For me at left tackle, and this might not be for every team, but for a lot of teams I've seen, especially with the Bears, Olin Kreutz back in the day with the 85 Bears, their center was, the mastermind, Jay. He was the captain. He talked to everybody on the line. Same thing with Olin. You know where I'm going with this. How come we didn't fix that? I can't figure this out, because me personally, I would be biased. I would have the best offensive line in the history of ever in as quick as I can, faster than the word of God in 2 years. So I'm trying to figure this out, Nomad. I can't make any sense to it. But for me, at least at the center position, I don't take that lightly, because I have a lot of respect for that. And in my mind, it is the most important cohesive unit on the offense to get right. You know what I mean? And I'm hoping that he's got a plan, and we're about to see what's going to happen this year. Do you have any thoughts to all of that?
Well, I think, the easiest thing that your average fan might feel like, okay, the easiest way to resolve a problem is to throw money at it. And so
Right.
just imagine if they came in right away and threw cap money right at the center position, say, and he wasn't the right guy. I think they have a plan to acquire a center in free agency this year. I think the center that they're looking for, I'm gonna give you I'm gonna throw a name out at you. I'm pretty sure you've heard of, but I would imagine Aaron Brewer is the first guy on their priority list.
Yes.
Tennessee, undersized guy, but really strong. I mean, he doesn't lack anything. And I watched him when I think we ended up with a Tennessee offensive line coach. I think
we did.
And okay, so when I started connecting the dots, and I went to who their free agents were, and I found out that he might hit the market. And I started doing homework on him, and I saw his size. I go right to Google and start looking at size and those kinds of traits. And then I go to the film, and I was expecting to see a guy that got pushed around and bullied. No, sirree. I think he is absolutely dominant at his position, as a matter of fact, and as agile as I've ever seen a center be. He is special. I mean, when I tell you that, anybody within the sound of my voice that can go and has time to go and look at some Aaron Brewer film, you will see how he came up and he ended up assuming the center job and playing it full time, and he never came out of there. Right next to our guy on the right side. Who is that? Number 64?
Yeah.
What's his name on our team? Well, I forget his name all the time.
Me too.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah,
Nate Davis.
Nate Davis. Yeah, I can't figure out for the life of me. Like, it was just a bad chain of events, man. I still believe in the guy. But you know what? You can't build your roster around I believe in a guy. You know what I mean? You have to protect him from mayhem. I mean, quite honestly, right behind our two faces, we've got the Maserati. We went out and got we've been wanting this guy for years. We've been begging to have a quarterback like this, right? Then we don't protect him from mayhem, and then we want to know why mayhem's happening all around him, and he's got to, at a moment's notice, break ankles and turn up and do these amazing things. And I mean, honestly, it's a really bad situation to have a young kid in to put a cape on every time, because if you could walk into a situation like, I swear to God, like San Francisco or the Eagles, and now Baltimore finally got it figured out. They're like, okay, Lamar the superstar ain't going to be around forever. We might want to start giving him some weapons. They always had offensive line. They had a good defense, always a good defense. And now they got Raquan. Well, which that's what worries me about JJ, because I'm just like, I don't know at this point. I'd like to see JJ resign, but I thought we were going to sign Raquan. But to that, I digress, because I was very pleased with the plan that Poles had in getting the linebackers, and that pretty much like a 2-for-1 type deal. So, but getting back to that point, you gotta protect this guy, man. I mean, you look at 135, somewhere around there, sacks he's already had. I went and I looked at Peyton Manning, and he had 17, 18 years in the league. He had 300 sacks. My guy Fields almost has half that in less than 3 years. Like, we have to address the elephant in the room. And for me, it's the offensive line, Nomad. I mean, I don't know. Did you say what position you played?
I was a corner, and
you were a corner,
kick returner, and all that.
Oh, wow! So you did a bunch of everything. Okay. Yeah. So I don't know what your thoughts are as far as building the trenches or anything about that, but I think it's very important, very vital. And I do like how you went out and addressed that we should go out and get a veteran, because I do feel that a veteran center is important, moreover than getting a rookie center. It's almost like a position that you want to try to work a guy into that role eventually, but not put him as a day one starter right away to protect the, and handle the rock for every possession. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you. I think that would be the worst mistake by putting a rookie under in a situation like this. But you are absolutely right. I talk about this all the time on the show, and it goes back to what I heard Ryan Poles say. What was it? Sometime this right before the season, they asked him questions about why reasons why teams are successful over time. Just multiple years is because it's the teams that get it right in the trenches. And so what I know is, and I think they know inside the building as well, which is why one of the main reasons why I stand firm in they're going to commit to Justin, because they know they didn't get it right in the trenches for him. My guy dealt a terrible hand, different offensive coordinators, a lame duck head coach when he first got here. And so the instability and the inconsistency, you see it on tape, it's reflected in everybody, not just Justin Fields. It's just, and then you have your people that just go right to a stat box and get you a piece of paper that tells you all of the Justin did this, Justin didn't do that, he won this, he didn't win that, and it's just it's such I don't expect everybody, every Bears fan to really study football in depth like I do, and I take that in consideration when I'm talking to them, but I try my best to explain to them that it's the ultimate team sport, and if you don't have the right pieces and those pieces aren't in joint together and communicating and executing, every play is going to look bad. I mean, each and every play could be a horror show. And so if you can name me 5 games in a row that Justin had the same offensive line, I'll send you $1 million. I'll rob somebody and give it to you. But I mean, it's just terrible the kind of hand this kid's been dealt, and everybody being so judgmental of him. Not to say that he had no problems. He had lots of flaws in the way that he played out there on the field. But if you look at the circumstances, I think given what he's been through and what he's persevered, I know there's something in me that knows inside that building that they know that all they have to do is commit to putting the infrastructure around him, supplying him with the weaponry, and you're going to get a whole different quarterback. The flashes will become more of the norm. That's what I think happened.
Oh, yeah. Hey, I had Keith Van Horn on, and a couple other offensive, Hilgenberg, and then, man, why can't I think of this is killing me. I had him on the show, 85 Bear. He's a Hall of Famer.
Huh? You had Hilge?
Yeah, I had Hilge on, but here's the deal. They said that you had 2 first-round draft picks right off the jump. They started in '83 building this line. So, I mean, we all know Walter, that was like it, but regardless, he still needed a line. And to that point, my grandfather, God rest his soul, his bleeding heart for the Detroit Lions and Barry Sanders, the only player he ever believed in. He told me that the Michigan Wolverines at one point had a bigger offensive line than his Detroit Lions did. And it pissed him off that they never gave him a proper offensive line or a quarterback. And he just, and that's where I'm at right now with Justin. That's where I'm at right now with our offense. And I do feel like if we get a couple more pieces in place and an offensive line, those reads will come out more smooth. He won't have to put the cape on. He won't feel like he has to play hero ball and use his legs all the time. He'll be able to release that ball in a comfortable, natural situation. And when it's time to just throw the ball out of bounds, he'll go ahead and feel like he can go ahead and do that and live to play another day. I really feel in my gut that those times where we're sitting back, we're watching, why didn't he just throw the damn ball away? So, it'd be, second and short instead of second and forever. I mean, quite honestly, like at a certain point, you start to wonder what the next down is going to look like and if it's going to get any better, or do I have to use what I got right now and squeeze a little bit more juice out of this in order to. It's just a really bad situation to put a young quarterback in, and I think I really know that if we put more, thought and get better. And I know that they've went out and they've got, guys with the mullets and the mustaches and tried to get some serviceable offensive linemen and go and get cute and this and that and do what they can, some budget rentals and stuff like that and whatever. But I really think it's time to just, go, like you said, go get that center from Tennessee, draft some guys. I don't know who you've got in mind as far as Alt is a name that comes up, maybe go ahead and grab another center in the draft and learn behind the Tennessee guy, or grab a guard. I still think a guard is an important position to get in there, so just in case Tevin goes through another injury spree or something like that. But for me, it's better to have all of these guys in line. And, in the position you played, matter of fact, I would like to ask you if you could circle back and come on the show when I have that defensive back that the Bears had. He was also a coach for the Vikings. What was his? I just talked to him the other day. He was actually, and then he was a defensive coordinator for Buffalo. Yeah. Oh man. Hold on one second. I'd like to have you back with him, because with your knowledge of being a defensive back in the at the pro level, that would be very awesome. You know what I mean?
While you're figuring that out, before I forget about it, let me circle back to the O-line, because
okay,
I'm gonna say something.
Frazier, Leslie Frazier.
Oh,
Leslie Frazier.
You had Leslie Frazier on here?
Yeah, no, not yet, but he's come. He's bookmarked to come on, and I'd like to see if you could come back and help me with that show.
Oh, sure, man. I'd love to sit and talk with Coach. And
okay,
yeah, man. But that offensive line, I'll tell you something interesting, man. I for one, I was one of the biggest Braxton Jones supporters when we got him. I had no idea who he was before they drafted him. But me being who I am, boom, as soon as we got him, I went to work on the film. And technically, he was probably one of the better offensive linemen that I'd seen in that class, technically. I did not notice the smaller lower body that he has when I started, watching him. And I knew I should know better than that, because some of my better friends are big O-lineman guys. We've been buddies for years, man. And they kind of teach me things that I need to know so I can know what I'm talking about. But that was an aspect of it that I didn't really pay attention to. But then it started to become apparent when, he started playing, that he couldn't really anchor. And so, and it's pretty clear to me that, the way he's built, he doesn't have the body structure to really ever, I don't think, I don't know how it's going to come, but
yeah,
I don't think he has the bottom on him to be able to anchor and really keep that left side quiet. And why I say this is because I noticed, I almost want to go do I hate all 22, but I want to show people, Justin really overcompensates. You can sense and you can kind of see at times that he overcompensates for the noise on the left side. And so
yes.
that's always in his head, and he reacts to it. That's one thing. Here's the other thing that's probably controversial to a lot of people. I would strongly consider switching Darnell Wright to the left side and drafting another right tackle, because the right tackle position is so rich in this draft. I mean, the better by far tackles, and it is a nice draft for offensive linemen, but the tackle position in particular, the right tackles are absolutely dominant. And people will say, no, we've been doing too much moving guys around. He's good where he's at. Don't listen. Let me tell you something. Darnell Wright came to Tennessee and started at left tackle and did well. You don't believe me? Go watch the Alabama-Tennessee game 2021. He stopped everybody cold. He's a natural left tackle. I wouldn't worry about Darnell Wright switching to the left side. I think he'll shine, as a matter of fact. I think in this situation, because the right tackle position is so rich, I would not be surprised if they grabbed another right tackle and put Darnell Wright on the left side, because I don't know that Braxton Jones ever going to be that guy to keep it quiet over there. I think he probably will make a pretty good damn swing tackle, but I don't think he's the Don Dada at the left tackle, and you need one.
Yeah, Goomba, really quick, where we stand with QB Justin Fields. If you look at our wallpaper behind us, that's our guy. That's our QB1. And I agree with you. I think he could switch over to left tackle. I will say this much to you. For me, when I was asked to in college and then later on in semi-pro, I told them, I let them know that it's been done before, because they like doing this to us. They think it's simple, but to some people it is. But for me, it was a little bit more, because you got your hand down in the dirt, right? So the way you have yourself firing off, and depending on how many repetitions you've had on one side, if they catch you early and you bounce back and forth, it's a little bit easier. Look at it like somebody that's on a skateboard or a surfboard or snowboard, something like that. They always push off with one foot. They never switch. They never do any of that other stuff. Some guys can. It's almost like batting, switch hitting, and batting and whatever. But it's very difficult, because all of your balance, your power, everything, it changes your technique. It's very important. It gets in your head. And one thing you don't want to do when you're playing the line, or probably any position really, is get in your head. You want to have so much repetition leading to retention that by the time the whistle blows, you're already popping tall and ready to go. And like you said, set an anchor or going forward, with a run block, or set an anchor for a pass, whatever, fast hands, get the hips set, all this stuff. It should just come naturally. And for me, switching over from left to right, it didn't work out so well for them. Luckily, it didn't work out so well for them either, because we were getting too much heat coming in on my quarterback's blind side. So they quickly switched me back over, and I was like, oh, thank you, Jesus, So because it just the balance thing threw me off, So, yeah. But that's not for everybody. But I'm just telling you my experience. You know what I'm saying? So,
yeah. My buddies say the same thing, man. I hear that. That's what you want to avoid. That's just moving guys around, and I think in this NFL, because the injuries, and people get moved around a lot, man, just because of attrition. I mean, you have to learn some of it, but I think it's probably best to keep people where they are, where they're getting the most reps at. Matter of fact, I'm pretty sure about that. I mean, I'll tell you right now, I'm not the biggest. That's probably my biggest weakness when it comes to evaluating. It's probably O-line, but my guys are getting me sharper and sharper all the time.
Yeah, honestly, I agree with you. I think that is the way to go. I do know that they do like to have potentially guys that play guard or center, like they tried with Cody, guys that play tackle, guard, swing, all that stuff, in case they're low on bodies and they need a shift, whatever. So I don't know if that's in his wheelhouse, if Wright can and has already played that position. If he has, and you already know about that, Nomad, that he can go from right to left really quick without skip, that's great. I'd say that's the more important position of the two, and rightfully so. And let's go ahead and just run to the left side, because a couple of times when I had Olin on here, Olin Kreutz was like, run the ball to the left side almost every time. Whenever you run the ball, run to the left. You're not going to have a problem. And every time we ran to the ball, the left side, we had success, bro. So, I mean, even there was a couple points where Justin did some naked bootlegs and turned something out of it and headed down the field. And I'm like, there you go again. You know what I mean? So there's something to that. So
that is absolutely where Braxton Jones shines in the run game. He absolutely shines. Olin is absolutely right. But you need to pair up the combination between Olin and Tevin over there. Then you got So yeah, he's dead on. He was dead on about that.
But it's not fair to like you said, how many times during the season had Justin had a formidable offensive line that week in and week out played together, because there's no other probably the defensive line too, but I only play that in emergency situations. It was not pretty. And what with offensive line, you are a team within the team. We do everything together. We eat together. We work out together. We watch tape together. Everything, except for if you're a tight end, which I tried that. I thought, I caught a couple cool balls, and they're like, okay, so here's the deal. This is what you're going to do, Hyatt. You are going to practice with the offensive line, and then you are going to do all the physical activities, running and all that type of stuff with the receivers. And I was like, what? So, dude, it was probably, I said, hey, I've had a change of heart, coach. I don't think this tight end thing is, I'm not cut out for it. You know what I mean? So, but yeah, man. Hey, listen, it was a pleasure and an honor to have you on this show. We've got somebody knocking on the door in the back door. I'd love to have you back on, man. It's such a, it was great to have you. I think we could have went for another half hour, just you and me, but
easily,
yeah, man. So hey, man, be blessed, and thanks again for answering my call, brother.
Hey, Brandon, anytime, man. I appreciate you for having me on. I enjoyed your energy, man, and be quite frank, man. I want you to come over and do some stuff with us too when you have time, man. Just have you on the show anytime, and
yeah,
I really appreciate this, man. So. Shout out to you for having me on, man. And anytime, man, just let me know.
Hey, there's Sean. He says Superback's in the house. Hey, do us a favor and tell everybody where we could find your content at, please.
You can find me on Twitter at Nomad Networking, but I am the founder and owner of the Nomad Network YouTube channel, and that's where you can find our content. We do daytime content now, Monday at 3 o'clock, 3 p.m. Central. And then Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, we do 12 noon Central. And so, and on the weekends, we do Nomad at night on Sundays right now. Let me make sure I'm getting everything right. But I think I pretty much covered everything. I got a show to do today at 3 o'clock. It's a pretty good show I think we have in mind today. So that's about all I got, man. I appreciate you one more time, Brandon, for having me on.
Yeah, no problems, man. And hey, fellas, do yourself a favor. You'll raise your IQ and enjoy yourself at the same time. Check out this Nomad, and he's the real deal, man. Check him out, like and subscribe, and you'll really enjoy his content. Thanks again, Nomad.
Appreciate you, man. See you later, man.
Yep. Hey, what's up, Eric? How you doing, buddy?
Doing well, man. Long time no see. It's been like what, almost a year since I've seen you guys.
It's been a hot minute, man. I appreciate you bailing me out with that answer to that coach earlier. That was great, man.
Yeah, no worries, man. Like, last time, like, I admit I apologize for like being dead asleep when the last time you wanted to have me on the show, and I'm like, well, I got to make it up to you somehow. So you caught me in the perfect opportunity. And I said, oh, well, I'm on the camera today, so that works for me. But thanks for having me on again, man. What's up, Sean? I see you in the comments. What's up, Sean?
Yeah, no, it's great to have you, man. I knew for a minute you were busy, MIA for a long time, taking care of what you had to do, and now you're back in the building, and it's great to have you. I've caught some of your write-ups and from some of your content, some of your not messages, but some of your tweets and whatnot, some really good stuff. And right now is the time to pick Eric's brain, because he's getting deep diving into these rookies, these guys that are getting ready to fire off to the combine and all that, and does some really good write-ups and stuff for Windy City Gridiron. So, yeah, that's where you can find him at. And there you go. He's got it right there, man. Veteran. So, yeah, man. So what else has been going on, Eric?
So I moved to Rhode Island, and this is my humble abode over here in the snowy tundra that is Rhode Island. But just got this nice big house, so this is the basement to my own house, and yeah, it's quite beautiful over here. And then I still have to get all the Bears decorations up, but they'll get up in no time. At least I got one somewhere over there behind me that I got the helmet up. That's kind of the starting point for the decoration process. And then, of course, just catching up to all the different free agency and the draft talk that's going to be picking up steam over the next couple of months for the Chicago Bears and everywhere else in the NFL.
One thing I didn't get to talk to Nomad about, but I'm sure we will in the future, is and we'll get into it right here. We kind of went around we built within the line and talked about all the players and whatnot, needs and whatever. But so basically, this whole culture change, it always starts at the top. You know where I'm going at with this, top of the food chain of command. It all starts up at the top, works its way all the way down. And I mean, forever, I've been waiting. I've been hoping that we would have somebody in Kevin Warren, as a president, and he checks a lot of the boxes already. Also, polls, man. I mean, I have not seen this fan base as excited for a GM in a long time. And what's your thoughts about this culture change starting at the top? What do you got to say about these two guys?
It's pretty big. I would say they're a much more outgoing group. They are definitely the type of leadership that people appreciate to work for, work with. They bring their own set of ideologies into the building. And even though Kevin Warren, he's not the football champion that most people wanted as a team president in terms of being that long-term veteran scout or that long-term veteran GM elsewhere, becoming the grand poobah of all that is football, Kevin has a very strong sense of leadership dating back to his days in Minnesota, back to when the Rams were in St. Louis. Very well regarded as a leader, brings in big vision, brings in this big challenging presence. When talking to people that were in the Big Ten, he didn't really mesh with a lot of the Big Ten coaches because, quite honestly, college football, they're stuck in their ways. That is truly an organization that's been around for hundreds of years, and they're very stuck in their own personal beliefs. And Kevin Warren, he challenged the status quo. He challenged the entire organization to step outside the box, to think outside the box and say, well, the SEC is building up. Why can't we as a big team? Why can't we as a Big Ten step up, start looking at these bigger TV contractual rights, these bigger broadcast platforms? And was his time perfect as a commissioner for the Big Ten Conference? No. But did it lead to big changes that would take progressive steps moving forward? Yes. And now you've got the SEC and the Big Ten as the top two college football. I can't even say conferences. They're like leagues now, with all the teams that they've acquired between the Big Ten and the SEC. So you've got Kevin Warren bringing his style of leadership to the building. Then you got Ryan Poles, who I kind of find a little funny that people kind of want to picture him as some sort of secretive, secret squirrel kind of person that hides his real intent. He's not a liar. I mean, in fact, for people that know Ryan Poles, they will legitimately ask, can he actually lie to begin with? He's always been more of a straightforward type of person. And when people try to assume what his next step's going to be, or they try to guess, well, he's hiding his intentions, or he's trying to play his hand to portray a different message, that's not Ryan Poles. He's about as straightforward as it gets. And more or less, he's basically just someone that brings this kind of a younger mentality. Like the last couple of GMs the Bears have had, besides Ryan Pace, a little bit more long in the tooth. But Ryan Poles comes in, real young mentality, real young, hungry mindset to build a team the right way. And more or less, with Ryan Poles, he's got a vision. It's going to take a little bit of time, but this is something that really is just a real big change for the Chicago Bears, considering every GM they've had for the last few decades. All right, and while Brandon is stepping away to take care of a few things, I remember there's a lot of talk about the offensive line, and I wrote down a few notes as to, players that, since we're talking about building the offensive line, I think it really starts with the center position for the Chicago Bears. And they're in a unique situation. I think they can go free agency, and I think they will go free agency considering the veteran players that are available in that position. But the draft, they have a lot of intriguing options too. And one big thing, if we're going to talk about offensive line veteran additions, so everybody likes talking about Connor Williams. Well, my big issue with Connor Williams, and I'm going to throw in Scott Quisenberry as well, is they're both coming off of very significant injuries. Both of them tore their ACLs. And Connor Williams had like the worst possible timing for his injury because it happened, I believe, was it November, December, when he tore his ACL. And he's not going to be cleared to play most likely until late October, early November of this year at the earliest. So for him to sign a free agency deal elsewhere will be very, very hard for him at this time. And then with Scott Quisenberry, he tore his in August. And where I think Scott is a pretty decent offensive lineman when he's healthy, you still got that same issue of coming off a significant knee injury. So for me, those two players would be the least likely targets for the Chicago Bears, considering that Ryan Poles does typically not sign players with significant injuries in recent years. We look at guys that play with people who are currently Chicago Bears staff. I remember you guys brought up Aaron Brewer from the Tennessee Titans, who was the starting center when Jason, I can't pronounce his name right now, but Huteling, Jason Huteling was the offensive line coach for the Tennessee Titans, and he is most likely going to be a likely tie to Aaron Brewer if the Bears pursue him for agency. And then another coach on the staff the Bears hired this year, of course, Shane Waldron, the offensive coordinator. His center in Evan Brown is going to be available in free agency as well, barring any unforeseen circumstances. And Evan Brown, I really like his game. He's been someone that has consistently improved their game since his time with the Detroit Lions. And those two, I think, if you're talking about just in terms of connecting the dots and bringing familiar players to familiar coaches, Evan Brown and Aaron Brewer would be the top two on my list. But another player that I really think would make a lot of sense would be Andre James. Andre James is still pretty young at 26 years old. He offers good size, good length to the center position. He originally played offensive tackle when he was drafted by the Las Vegas Raiders. And he has steadily been one of the better centers in the league. And he really kind of embodies that typical free agency target for Ryan Poles, where he's a young player coming off his first rookie contract with, in this case, the Raiders. He is an ascending player at the position. If you're a pro football fanatic or a pro football focus fanatic in terms of grading the players, and he scored a pretty decent score. I think it was like about 72, 73. But I'm not the biggest believer in PFF in that regard for grading offensive line. So with Andre James, he offers a really good combination of, nasty run blocking, decent pass protection. And another player that a lot of people like to talk about is Lloyd Cushenberry out of the Denver Broncos. He had a career year with the Denver Broncos this last year. And if anything, I think Lloyd Cushenberry gets the biggest contract of any center this offseason because, again, Connor Williams coming off a torn ACL probably won't be cleared until October, November at the earliest. And then you've got Scott Quisenberry, who, again, tore his ACL in August. So those two players coming off significant injuries kind of, degrade the mark a little bit. Lloyd Cushenberry, I think that would be kind of the dream scenario for the Chicago Bears if they were to go big in free agency. But besides him, I think guys like Andre James, Aaron Brewer, and Evan Brown would make the most sense for the Bears.
Okay, so really quick, did you talk about that center Tennessee Titans available?
Yes, Aaron Brewer. Yep, and his offensive line coach is now the assistant offensive line coach for the Chicago Bears, which I think that's an incredible hire.
Yes.
For them to be able to get Tennessee's offensive line coach to come as an assistant. And Aaron Brewer is a very likely connection. Now, the only thing with Aaron Brewer is he's a little bit on the small side, but don't tell that to Olin Kreutz because Olin Kreutz, he may have been like maybe 290 pounds and 6'3", but he was like one of the nastiest sons of guns you ever meet in the entire world. And Aaron Brewer plays like one of the nastiest dudes I've seen on film. But besides Aaron Brewer, Evan Brown, who was the Seattle Seahawks center last year, played for Shea Waldron, a very likely connection there as well. And again, the other two players I mentioned would be like Andre James of the Raiders and Lloyd Cushenberry of the Broncos.
Well, you heard it first, folks, because we got the offensive line coach formerly from the Tennessee Titans. Eric is now stepping out and telling us that we will sign Derrick Henry this year.
Whoa, hold on now. I don't think so, man.
I'm just kidding, man. I'm just kidding. I'm trying to connect the dots, you know.
Yeah, that's a dangerous one to play because
that would be.
I mean,
awesome.
would I be okay with Derrick Henry coming to Chicago? I mean, I'd be okay, but to spend big money at the running back position when Ryan Poles most likely is going to draft another running back anyways, and he already has a really good young stable in the backfield. I mean, I don't see that happening at all. And then I see a question here, looking at the Eagles O-line, the interior of their units, Dickerson, Kelsey, Jurgens. Well, Kelsey's now gone, but pointless standing. All played center in college. Do you think that is a better way to go for the Bears? It's a case-by-case basis. I think it's a case-by-case basis because the center position this year in the draft is loaded. You know, there are some absolute studs to be available in this year's draft. My top guys, and I just wrote them down this piece of paper here to make sure I remember their names this time. So Jackson Powers Johnson out of Oregon, that is my absolute number one right now. To me, he's just big, powerful, nasty.
Yeah.
He actually weighed in a lot heavier than I expected. When I was watching him, I had him about 315 pounds. When he went to the Senior Bowl in Mobile, he listed over 330 pounds. He's packed a lot of muscle during his time with the Oregon Ducks. And you just watch his film, man. He looks a lot like Kyle Long. He reminds me a lot of Kyle Long, his big nastiness, size. And he has that commanding presence at center. I think if the Bears were to go draft a center, they would have to have confidence in their ability to call the plays, you know, as a rookie or call the protection concept as a rookie. And Jackson Powers Johnson will most certainly have that ability as a young center. Other names like Cedric Van Pran out of Georgia, very popular name. I'm not so high on Van Pran because I think even though he's got decent size, he's got decent athleticism in the center position. I kind of question his consistency and his motor when trying to drive lanes in the run game. Another player that's not really talked about a lot, but might be making the switch from the outside in is Graham Barton out of Duke. He was a longtime left tackle out of Duke, but a lot of scouts are believing he's going to kick inside to guard or center. He'd instantly be one of the best interior offensive linemen in this draft. He was one of the more consistent pass protectors in college at left tackle. It's just his size, his frame doesn't really mesh well with what you would expect to have in the offensive tackle position in the NFL. And I think a position to kick inside is in the cards for him. And one more popular name that I've seen a lot for the center position is Zach Frazier out of West Virginia. Guys, again, just nasty guy, good size, athleticism. That's kind of the mold that Ryan Poles looks for in his offensive line, that combination of size and nastiness and athleticism and versatility. And all these players I'm talking about between Jackson Powers Johnson, Cedric Van Pran, Graham Barton, and Zach Frazier all offer team versatility between the different techniques they played and positions they played.
Well, you didn't mention any of the Wolverines, and I would almost take the entire freaking line. To me, when I watch them play, taking care of JJ and them running the rock, man. I don't know, man. I like some of those guys. They got to be somewhere falling.
They're good players. I mean, I have them as some of the better guards, but when asking can they play center, I start kind of raising a question mark. Can they play center? Because when you look at the Michigan,
there you go.
Guards, and he brought one of them, Drake Nugent out of Michigan. It's just I think he is a guy that if you want to play him as a guard, he would most certainly fit in as a guard. But my big question is, can they transition inside to center? Because people would think transitioning from guard to center is pretty easy. Well, just ask Cody Whitehair, who the Bears just released yesterday. It's not an easy transition, especially if you don't have a lot of experience snapping the ball. So that'd be one question I would have for either one of the Michigan guards is, can they snap the ball consistently well as have the ability to call the protections of the line of scrimmage? And I would have to see it to believe it. Not saying but I think they'd be really good fits.
Drake is actually a center. So
Drake's actually a center? Okay.
Yeah, Drake Nugent is actually a center for Michigan. I think what we're dealing with there potentially, correct me if I'm wrong, who's ever in the chat, just as Facebook user, is I think there was an injury somewhere this year or possibly last year. But, I mean, we all get banged up. It just depends on what type of bang we're, there's, you're playing through hurts and then you're, injured, so there's.
Yeah, he sprained his ankle on November 25th. That was the one question mark for the injury.
That's nothing.
That's nothing, though. I mean, it's just I have to watch more Drake Nugent. So that's something I'll have to do for myself.
Yeah.
Michigan's offensive line, they look good. They pushed Alabama around like nothing in the playoff game.
Yes.
That is something that you have to give praise to. It's just I have to watch a little bit more. The guys I have right now between Jackson Powers Johnson, Cedric Van Pran, Zach Frazier, and Graham Barton, I think they have a higher ceiling.
Yeah.
And especially when you look at a guy like Jackson Powers Johnson, I mean, that dude friggin' obliterated top-tier talent and anyone you line up against. And you've got Facebook user again, Zach Zinter was the other guard from Michigan. And, he was the one that had the injury as well. So that answers your question as well.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's and I think Ohio State is the way to go, looking for offensive linemen and whatnot and all of that. I do, like you said earlier, Georgia, I look at the Power Five, those teams that also run the ball and pass. I mean, LSU, they've got to have formidable, offensive line too. So I'm sure make no mistake about it, Ian Cunningham and Poles are doing their homework, you know what I mean, and got the right guys on the case to break it down, because I'm pretty sure at their level they can't sit around and watch offensive linemen film all day like they used to, probably, So, but getting back to that, since we had to take a pause, sorry about that. I had a call from work. Whenever you're on nights, it seems like days is always calling you, But when I'm on nights, I don't bug the, I don't bug the day guys because they're sleeping when I'm working, So, anyways, but it's all good. So thanks for covering for me. But getting back to Ryan Poles and Kevin Warren and all of that, and building this culture. I mean, I think it's really cool. I think it's really special. They've also been talking about having an open door. They strategically placed both of their offices next to each other. Mm-hmm. And I'll actually be able to see that here in the near future. This month, I'm supposed to be interviewing Kevin Warren over at Hallis. So that'll be really cool to be a part of that. Cool. That's going to be really fun.
Cool to hear, man. Gosh, but I'd pay money to be able to join in that conversation myself.
Yeah,
that's incredible. Kevin Warren, that's the big man right there who had some pretty interesting words about Justin Fields, if you want to talk about him. But that's, mentioning like Kevin Warren, just again, he's just got such an infectious personality when he steps into the room. You listen to how the media present themselves and talk to Kevin. It's just a whole different vibe between him and Tim, or not Tim, Ted Phillips. And it's just, when Ted was there, it's kind of like, oh, good grief. Here's the same dog and pony show we have again. But when Kevin Warren takes the podium, it's like, oh, okay, everybody just stop talking. Everybody listen up real quick. Let's just listen real quick. I mean, he's had that presence everywhere he's been too, dating back to his days in the Rams, the Vikings, the Big Ten Conference, and the Big Ten Conference has some of the biggest egos and personalities on the planet. And for him to be able to, assert himself at the top, it was just something else. And it's not an easy job to have when you sit yourself as a commissioner for one of the oldest and the biggest of the college football powerhouses and the conferences that exist. It requires a guy with a very tough skin, very thick skin, and someone that really can assert themselves at the top anytime they step into the room. And that's who Kevin is. It's just, he truly is that predominant alpha in the building.
Yeah, and he's but he does it in a very meek, humble, kind way. He's very, very kind, very humble. Mm-hmm. His whole approach, his demeanor, everything is just like, I mean, look, I'm nobody, and he's he's like, hey, come on down. I'm like, sweet, let's go. So I mean, it just the whole thing of it is do you think that they're saying with the open door policy, listening to the players, do you think that's going to help build the culture and get people to say, hey, come check out Chicago? They listen to your voice. If you're a player, they listen to your voice. They will hear you out. And that doesn't mean that just because you're speaking, it's going to happen. You're going to speak it into existence. It's going to happen. Because if everybody's clamoring and if everybody's saying something, it's pretty hard to get through the day and get to what you have to get to, right? But just the fact of somebody is listening to you and hearing you out man to man, I mean, that speaks volume, and the culture that's being built instead of just that old, rigid way of this is how we're going. This is what we're doing. You know what I mean?
I absolutely know exactly what you mean. That's just something from my own personal experience is if you have somebody with, that perceived closed door policy, you can never approach them and talk about what you need to talk about unless it's an absolute emergency. It kind of rubs you off in a little bit the wrong way. Whereas with Kevin Warren, I mean, that's great to hear that he's, so open with his ability and his availability to meet with people. It's just, to me, that speaks volumes to everybody in the organization, not just players, but scouts, scouting executives, people that work at every level of the organization. It means a great deal when you have a leader at the top that is so open and receptive to conversations. I can't tell you how many times I've experienced both examples in my entire life. The ones that have that door just slammed all the time, the other one that has the door that's open all the time. Night and day. If I ever needed something that was urgent or something that I felt was going to be worthwhile, I'll go to the person that had the open door policy because they present themselves in an approachable manner. They can talk to you all the time if you really need to talk about something. And for players around the league, I think it will mean a great deal for them to be able to approach members of the organization and to be able to talk to them one-on-one. Like the conversations I'm sure is happening right now behind closed doors about Justin Fields, whatever is going to happen with him, what the Bears intend to do with that first overall pick, having an opportunity to be receptive to feedback from the players. And look, I know the analytics guys don't want to hear it. I know that the popular opinion around the media is, well, the opinion of the players doesn't matter, or, hey, if they show Justin Fields the door, the players will be a blank slate and, accept a new guy. It may not be the case. It's not always the case where you bring in the rookie and then you expect the roster of veterans to accept them right away. Especially now on the roster that's being built like the Bears, where starting this next year, whether you're lacking or not, you're going to be expected to win. And that's going to put incredible pressure on the quarterback, whoever it is next year. And to have that leadership where they're going to be receptive to feedback from players, that is absolutely huge. It just from an organizational standpoint, because why would I want to take my time and waste my effort to an organization that doesn't really value my feedback? Oh, it's for a paycheck. Well, okay, the paycheck only gets you so far. Right. And only brings you for so many years. And then you're like, well, screw this. And then unfortunately, the Bears for a long time, they had such a notorious history of you have players in the building, these talented players in the building that retire elsewhere. Olin Kreutz retired, I believe, with the New Orleans Saints. Then you had Brian Urlacher, who he did retire as a Chicago Bear, but was unceremoniously cut. Same thing with Lance Briggs, got unceremoniously cut. Matt Forte got traded to the Jets, I believe, to end his career. Charles Tillman in his NFL career with the Carolina Panthers. Just so many great Chicago Bears in recent years went elsewhere to finish their careers. And to me, that's pretty damning, to be honest. If they can't have the opportunity to win a ring in Chicago, if they can't have the opportunity to make a difference in Chicago and have their opinions heard in Chicago, to them, what's the point? And I totally understand why the players made their business decisions because, if they're not going to be valued the way they should be valued by the organization, then take yourself to an organization that will value that way.
Well, and to your point, catching us up, past Tillman and Urlacher and all that, now we get to Roquan. What I like what they did with Roquan is they asked him, where would you like to go? And he wanted to go to Baltimore. He wanted to be one of the best linebackers, if not the best, either behind Ray or being better than Ray. And it was really cool how they showed him off that way. And I really feel, if this happens to Justin or any other player on the Bears, they're going to sit him down and they're going to say, hey, where would you like to go first, instead of just shipping them off. I think that they're doing they have a really nice thing that they've got a really good foundation. They've got a grassroots approach, and it's starting to feel like home now. And I really feel like they're heading in the right direction. And I think they're making those changes, Eric, which is really cool,
Yeah, like to your point as well, like just yesterday when Cody Whitehair and Eddie Jackson were both released, it was a big cap savings move, sure, but something else they had afforded both those players was an ability to find a new team very quickly. I thought the Bears could have traded Eddie Jackson for a decent return, but instead of holding him over for a trade, they said, okay, Eddie, this is the opportunity to find a new path, to find a new home. We're going to release you early so that way you can get your search started. Yeah. And then same thing with Cody, because Cody had been with Chicago for a long time. He was drafted in 2016, if I'm not mistaken, and went through 2 different GMs, quite a few different coaches, and for him to have the ability to get a fresh start too. I mean, business is business in the NFL. If you don't perform, they're going to be shown the door. But at the very least, the way the Bears are doing this, they're at least value the person in those decisions too, because for so many years you watch around the league, teams see players as numbers, and so the numbers get treated as numbers. They get added, subtracted, multiplied, divided. Whereas the Chicago Bears, in recent years, the players are people, and people need to be treated like people, and that's why they're approaching this in a different manner. Where, okay, what is the best path for you? Because we intend to move on in a different direction. How can we help you set your place in a new position elsewhere? And for Eddie Jackson, I think he's going to be signed pretty quickly. Is he going to be signed to a big money deal elsewhere? I don't know, because injuries have really taken a toll on him. And, with Eddie, I think he's definitely going to be a player that the Eagles at least try to sign to a contract. But it just remains to be seen what happens in those players' careers. But at the very least, the Bears, they parted with it in the most professional way possible.
Yeah. No, yeah, I like how they did it. It was very classy, and I think, like you said, they're headed in the right direction, and it feels really good. Eric, thanks for your time, man. I appreciate you answering the bell. You have a blessed Friday and a great weekend, brother.
You too, man. Bear down as always.
Bear down. Mr. Michael, how you doing this TGI Friday, brother?
It's a good Friday, a little bit cold, but we've only had about 3.5 weeks of winter so far this year. So coping and hoping that spring is around the corner.
I saw a little sheet out there when I came in from work, because I was working nights, and my boy was like, "It's snowing outside, Dad," and I looked out there. I'm like, "Whoa, it is!" So nothing major, but still cool to look at. Nothing that's gonna make driving around a bear or anything like that. Even when he took off to go to the library and a couple other things, I'm like, he ain't gonna have no problems out there, So, but pretty soon, Chicago Bear fans are not gonna have to worry about that if they get this stadium built, because Kevin Warren's saying that we're gonna put a roof on it. You're gonna put a lid on this. Mike, how do you feel about that?
I feel great about it. When you take a look at, you'll have 3 enclosed stadiums in the NFC North. Of course, the indoor stadiums are built for speed. It'll be interesting with this translucent roof that they have in Minnesota, if they can grow real grass like they have at Soldier Field now. That would be my biggest concern, because the turf at Soldier Field was absolutely miserable for decades. So for those of you that are watching that don't know, Walter Payton never played a game in Soldier Field on regular grass. It was always the synthetic AstroTurf. So when the year Payton retired after the 87 season is when they took the turf out and put regular grass in. And it's been a absolute abysmal experience for the players ever since. It was constantly rated one of the worst playing fields in all of the NFL. But that changed when Eberflus came in and they changed the surface. And even going into the last two games of the year, against what was it, Atlanta and Detroit or whatever, I can't remember specifically. The field conditions were amazing. Yeah. So it'd be nice to see that. I just hope it gets built. That's the biggest problem. And the biggest problem is timing. If Kevin Warren would have been hired a year sooner, or if Mayor Lightfoot was reelected, they would already had shovels in the ground in Arlington Heights.
Yeah. And you look at that too, and all the other troubles and things that are happening all at once. It's amazing. This guy, how he can have time to do anything and be focused on everything all at once. It's crazy, So to be able to, and jumping around and bouncing around, and then having the tax problem, and now looking at this, and 78 and all that, and I mean it's crazy. So it's a good thing that they have a good foundation, a good trust policy. They've got, their offices are joined by each other, so there's not that I wonder what's going on down there, feel and see each other, keep each other updated, get in close with those conference war rooms and whatnot, and keep each other updated when need be and whatnot. So I think trust is very important when it comes to major moves like this, Michael, because there's a lot of things going on, a lot of moving pieces and stuff. And we're still building that foundation for the team in and of itself. I mean, all the other stuff is business stuff that you and I as fans don't even, we're content creators, but we're, first and foremost fans, and we don't worry about, what they worry about, so we want to just win, baby, so, and I think we're on the way. So I'm kind of excited about it. I'm not sure what's going to happen next or how it's all going to work about, I do know that didn't they bring him in because he's got prior experience into building a stadium? Wasn't that Minnesota or something? Or?
Yeah, he was the president of the Minnesota Vikings, and he helped build the stadium that is now one of the premier stadiums in the entire NFL at US Bank Stadium in Minneapolis. Here's my issue, and maybe I'm off base, maybe I'm not.
No, go ahead.
I think that if the city of Chicago and its politicians were serious about keeping the Bears in the city of Chicago, why wouldn't they offer up Area 78 years ago? Why would they hold that in their pocket? And now all of a sudden, Area 78 comes to light because the Chicago White Sox are threatening to move to Nashville. And of course, that's Reinsdorf's, that's his MO. They'll be, when they built the new Comiskey that became US Cellular, that became Guaranteed Rate, who knows what it'll be a couple of years from now. It was Tampa that they were dangling as ransom. If you don't build us a stadium, we're moving to Tampa. And of course, the Chicago politicians, they created the stadium district and whatnot. And Reinsdorf pretty much got a stadium built for free with little of his own money. And here's the Chicago Bears, who have been literally stuck at Soldier Field for 54 years. when they didn't want to go there in the first place. And they're still waiting for Chicago to come to the table with an adequate solution. So for those of you that are listening in, George Halas never wanted to go to Soldier Field. In fact, George Halas signed a lease to play their home games at Dyke Stadium, the home of Northwestern Wildcats, in 1971. It was a 5-year lease. It was signed. And the Big Ten commissioner stepped in and voided the contract, which basically forced Bears hands to move into Soldier Field. And they even sent a letter. The Chicago Bears sent the letter to its season ticket holders saying that we are moving into Soldier Field temporarily in order to find a permanent spot to build a stadium in the city of Chicago. How did that work for them?
Yeah.
So that's where I'm at. If I'm Kevin Warren, I'm calling their bluff and say, either you come up with a plan that works for Chicago by the end of the month, and that's 13 days away, we're going to proceed at Arlington Heights. That's just my opinion.
Well, it sounds to me, from what I gather, what I've heard on another show, that Kevin Warren and the mayor, the current mayor, have a good connection. They call each other by Mr. President and Mr. Mayor, and they're, in close conversations, have a lot of meetings and stuff, close contact and stuff like that. So maybe this is the right time and the right place and whatnot, and depending on money and whatever. And if you're serious, I mean, is it an apples to apples comparison of what happened potentially in the past? Possibly, but people do make a difference too, and connections and relationships make a difference. And I believe that might be what didn't get it done. Hopefully they will see the worth in Kevin Warren and what he brings to the table, and also the fact that his success rate in potentially already having this done before, like you said, in a stadium that, I mean, I don't know. Have you done a deep dive or taken a look at, obviously watching a game, but do you know anything else about the Minnesota stadium and why they consider it one of the best?
I don't. This is all from what I've read, but I haven't done a deep dive into it.
Yeah.
But the fans love it.
Yeah.
The Vikings love it.
Yeah.
The league loves it.
Yeah.
They've got this new style roof that allows natural light in, so it feels like they're playing in open air.
And it's not collapsing. And it's not collapsing all the time like the old one, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah,
maybe that's why they like it so much.
It's ironic that you said that, because when when Ditka referred to it as the old roller dome, the Humphrey Dome, a big snowstorm collapsed the roof, and they were forced to play the rest of the season at the University of Minnesota's new stadium.
Right.
That doesn't have a heated field. So that was kind of bad. That's when Brett Favre ended his career, suffering a concussion on a hit by Corey Wooten on that frozen turf. And then, of course, they played there afterwards a couple of years when they were building the new stadium. So it's just interesting. And, I'm glad you brought up Area 78. Why not, if you were the city, offer up 78 to the Bears, build the stadium for the Bears. Once they vacate Soldier Field, then build the baseball stadium for the Sox in the south lot of Soldier Field, because there's far more room to put a state-of-the-art stadium in the other things that they want, they being the Bears, want as part of the facility, and then put in the stadium over at Soldier Field. But there's now issues with that, because part of the configuration in Arlington, they also wanted to put in a sports book. They also wanted to put in a casino. They wanted to put in hotels. They want to put in an area similar to the Deer District up in Milwaukee, where fans can congregate and watch the games on big screens, both home and away, and a good place for Bears fans to congregate. Well, why not build that in Arlington Heights now? Do those simple things, the stadium, parking, and the common area with video screens, and then move on to the rest of the complex after the stadium is built. And I think that's what they're going to do ultimately.
Yeah, and I'm curious to see what would happen as far as another team coming in. They were talking about potentially another team coming into Chicago, and what would that look like? I mean, we already have two MLB teams, and that's you look at California, and they've got a whole plethora. I mean, some of them are actually moving over to Vegas and whatnot, but in my mind, it's always, that. But I mean, it's kind of interesting to see what that would look like, what kind of revenue that would bring in, and how that would be welcomed in the city of Chicago. And if people that follow the Bears, fans that follow the Bears, would actually follow the other team more than they would if, there's a fine line. There's not too many people that are Sox and Cubs fans. What would that? You are one, Mr. Michael. So
yes, I am.
Yeah. So that's interesting right there. But like I said, to that point, what would that look like as far as football, because there's some diehard Bears fans. I doubt that they would waver and also support another team just because they're in Chicago, taking the shine away, or would they embrace it and welcome them? And what would that look like? Because the way Carolina's been buttering up to us and giving us everything we want, you'd almost think that they want a place in Chicago,
When it comes to another football team in Chicago, the only way that's going to happen is if it's the spring league. What do they call it? The UFL now. It was the XFL and the USFL, and they merged.
Okay.
And now that would be a great idea, because you would have an instant rivalry with St. Louis. But to put another NFL team, I don't see that happening. Okay. Especially if you're going to have a grass field, because it would just get torn up. You can save Soldier Field for soccer, for the City League football finals and state championship games and whatnot there.
Yeah.
But I don't ever foresee, as long as I'm alive, that an NFL team would move into Chicago, because there's far more areas. Number one, there's far more areas that would love to put a team in their city. Number two, I don't see them expanding beyond 32 teams for years. They might expand to an 18-game schedule and in an 8-game, eight teams per conference playoff round robin, but I don't see them expanding beyond 32 teams.
No, but and to your point, I do agree with that, but I also would like to interject that potentially this could be like a LA Rams to St. Louis Rams, type feel, where potentially Jacksonville or Carolina would be like, Jacksonville Bears, or what would be the Jaguars, Chicago Jaguars, or Chicago Panthers, or something like that. That's what I meant to say. But you know what I'm saying as far as that second team. I know it's a stretch. I don't even know why they talk about it, and why we would even listen. It's hard to get in and out of Soldier Field. There's one way in and one way out, and everybody's trying to get out at the same. It's a mess, So hopefully this other, 78 is. It sounds like it is. It sounds like it's a lot more. What am I? The word I'm easy to get in and out of and whatever. So
accessible.
Thank you. Accessible. Friends, right in front of you, who you got is Michael Holch. He's our on Windy City End Zone. He writes amazing work. He does a great job. He also has his own podcast. I'd like you to follow him, and he's a historian. He's got a lot of good content, and every time that I ever have him in front of me, I'm definitely sharpening my pencil because I always learn something about Chicago, and he's even got some like knowledge about the Packers and other teams too. I'm just like, it's always something new. You never know what you're going to learn from this guy. So and if you look behind him, all the cool stuff that he's got, you can't even see behind my big head. All I've got is that little piece there that my daughter got. It's a little thing there. It says Chicago Bears, but he's got Sayers jersey autographed, bunch of pictures up there, Holotech Hall pictures up there. Well, a lot of cool stuff, man. So yeah, man, true historian there.
I have to take the Holotech Hall banner down. I've got one that just says Holotech on it. That's on the wall across from me, where I've got 2, 4, 6, 8 autographed Bears jerseys, 3 autographed Cubs jerseys, 4 autographed Blackhawks jerseys, and some of the pictures behind me are all autographed. But the Windy, God love Shane Taube. He basically purchased the rights to the Holotech Hall show, and we've renamed it the Windy City End Zone Show. And
wow.
And I've now I also write for it's Windy City End Zone .football, and I'm the lead writer for that website.
Is this breaking news, or has it been happening? It just really hasn't been talked about, or I'm sure you've talked about it on your show, right?
Correct. I've talked about it on my show.
Transition.
I believe I've now done three podcasts under the Windy City End Zone banner.
Oh, cool. That's really cool. That would make sense because I've been on nights for about 3 weeks now. 3 weeks too long. But yeah, so yeah, man. Let's see, what else were we going to? Well, that's something from Misty.
You wanted to talk about salary cap.
Yeah, salary cap. Sorry about that. I just got an update from Misty. Look, she might call in. I don't know if she's got, the time. She was up all night with Mongo. It started out with pneumonia. They thought potentially it was pneumonia, then went to the emergency room, and come to find out it was just a urinary tract infection, which is way better than pneumonia with what he's got going on with ALS and all that. That he's had that before, and that'll take some time and some medication, whatever, but he'll be all right. And so she's getting a little bit of bed rest right now. They gave her this. Let me see if I can. No, I don't know.
Well, while you're looking for that, the son of Walter Payton. I can't see it. It's all glary. But Jarrett Payton posted your message about praying for Mongo on Twitter. Yeah. It got to me as I was broadcasting live with Kenneth Davis from Under Center Podcast and NBC Sports. So I shared it live on my show last night, and just absolutely hit like a ton of bricks. So there was a lot of crap that went on yesterday. First of all, you had Connor Bedard being activated and playing for the first time since the beginning of January in last night's game against the Pittsburgh Penguins. You had the news that the Chicago Bears released Eddie Jackson and Cody Whitehair, and then of course the breaking news about Mongo, and we talked about all of that on our show last night. I think you're on mute. You're on mute, Brandon. You're still on mute.
Okay. Hey, everybody, really quick. This is Mongo's wife, Misty. She's going to give us an update on Mongo really quick.
Yes, Good morning, almost afternoon, everybody. He is doing really good. He's at Silver Cross in ICU, but he's only in ICU because he has a ventilator. But he has a urinary tract infection, and he's on 2 different antibiotics to clear that up. He's already pissed off that he's at the hospital, so he's going to be fine. And we should be coming home in a few days as soon as doctors see that his urine's cleared up and that the antibiotics are doing their job, which I know they are. So thank you for all the prayers and good wishes because they're working.
Okay, Misty, thank you very much. I'm with a gentleman right now that would like to have you and I on the show when your schedule frees up, and of course when Mongo is healthy again.
Sounds great.
All right, well, you have a good day, and let me know if you need anything. Okay, Misty?
Thanks, guys. Love you.
Love you too. Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Love you too.
She's like really quick, and then I gotta go. So
I wish I could have said hello to her while she was there, but I understand everything that she's going through, and there'll be time for us to get together, hopefully down the line.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yep. So yeah, basically, here's what I want to know. With the free agency and the cap space that we have, where do you see us going? Where do you think the first major need for us to take care of is, and how do you feel we'll fill out our roster?
That's a great question. First and foremost, you've got to re-sign Jalen Johnson. Now, if they franchise tag him, that's going to be what, 17, 18, maybe $20 million, and that is a full cap hit on this year's cap, which I would prefer to see them sign him to a 3-year deal, add a avoidable year on it, give him a big signing bonus with a small contract this year, so that cap hit isn't as substantial as it would be if they just signed him to a franchise tender. So that would maybe only be an $8 to $10 million cap hit. They have about, with the new cap money after releasing Eddie and Cody, they got about just, I believe, under $55 million of cap space. And that's, when you look at it, they're about 70 million, but you've got to set aside about 12 million of that to cover rookie contracts during the draft. Boom. So it's not the full 70 some odd dollars that people are looking at and go, oh, great, we can spend all this money. Yeah. They can't. So you got to take 12 million of that, set it aside for the rookie contracts. Now,
well, no, Michael.
Yeah.
Good question. We potentially might have 2 to 3 first-round draft picks this year alone. So does that mean that we need to set a little bit more than that 12 point? Because I mean, potentially, I think your numbers are obviously really close to what they should be, but we need to allow a little bit more than that, obviously, if we potentially have 2 to 3 first rounds, because usually the first rounders cost more, right, Michael?
That's absolutely correct. But, you know, the salary cap is obviously a fluid situation.
Right.
So they're going to have to be creative when they sign not only Jalen Johnson, but a couple of free agents. I don't really see Ryan Poles making a big splash in free agency, a lot like he did last year. You know, everybody criticized Ryan Poles for his handling, but look at what they did. They got in some great starters. They executed the draft almost perfectly and upgraded their roster to the point where they were actually in the hunt for a playoff spot right up until the end of week 17. Where week 18 became meaningless. And if they would have just beaten any one of Denver, the first game against Detroit, or Cleveland, they're in the playoffs. So that's what great job Poles did with the roster and with the salary cap. Now, one thing that I expect them to do in free agency is I think they're going to address center in free agency because they still have a young offensive line and they have a young quarterback, regardless of whether it's going to be Justin Fields or a rookie. And you need that veteran's presence in the middle of the line. And I don't have his name in front of me because I threw my notes away from last night's show and I don't have it in front of me. But there's Cushenberry from Denver, and there's a guy who actually played only 1 year for Seattle, but he played for Detroit in 21 and 22. He played center for 12 games when Ragnow was gone for the year in 21. In 22, he shifted over and played an additional 12 games at guard when their star guard was also lost for the year. Last year, he went to Seattle, and I wish I had his name in front of me, and I apologize.
That's all right.
And earned the starting position. So now he already knows Waldron's system.
Right.
Okay. So that would be a huge get, in my opinion, for the Bears offensive line.
Michael, to your point, when you talk about continuity, because that's the big, word that we're using right now in Chicago, continuity. We look at the offensive line coach, assistant offensive line coach that we signed from Tennessee. I've heard from 2 or 3 sources recently, Eric, who was just on before you, he was talking about the center for the Tennessee Titans. Is that somebody that potentially could work out for us too, as far as a veteran center? You think that he would work out good for us?
Absolutely. Absolutely. He was on one of the lists. I actually wrote an article about free agent centers. I think you read it.
Yeah.
Oh, you read my rookie. No, I gave, because I sent it to you to give to your guys last night.
Yep.
So there was 4 or 5. One was the Miami Dolphins center, but he just had a torn ACL, so I can't factor him in, although he's one of the best talents out there that are technically free agents right now. But you're right. The guy from Tennessee, the guy from Denver, there is and again, I'm sorry that I don't have the article with me. Maybe you can pull it up. But the Raiders center, who's a little bit small in size he's only about 275 pounds, but he's excellent in pass pro. And he actually held his own against most of the behemoth defensive tackles in the AFC last year.
Yeah. Free agency. Cushenberry, Tyler Biadasz, Andre James, Connor Williams, Evan Brown.
Yeah, Evan Brown is the Seattle center that I think would be a good fit. Cushenberry would be, by all accounts that I've read and researched, he is the top center free agent that's available. But now we don't know whether or not any of these centers are going to be franchised or offered tenders. Right. I don't know if they're completely unrestricted free agents, that they're veterans. I think that they are. So those are the 2 that I think that the Bears, if they can't get Cushenberry, they're gonna grab the guy from Seattle, in my opinion.
Let me ask you a question. Why were you so quickly to say that you would rather address the center position from the free agency rather than the draft? What were you looking at there?
Experience.
Okay.
In the word experience, you've got young. If you go back to last year, one of there was a center that everybody wanted for the Bears to draft, and I'm sure you're familiar with Greg Gabriel.
Yeah,
I enjoy Greg Gabriel's conversations, and being a former longtime scout and in the Bears organization, he absolutely shot down the idea of drafting a center last year because of all the youth on the offensive line. You need that veteran presence to keep that line improving. And that's why I went straight to free agency. They have other needs that they can fill in the draft. I I am dying on the hill that the Bears are going to trade down and keep Fields. That's just my opinion from what I'm hearing. You have to shut out the noise. In fact, Kenneth Davis and I talked about this last night on my show, and it's remarkable in that all of the most players and former players are in Justin Fields' corner, and most media, especially the national media, can't wait for the Bears to draft Caleb.
Well, and the reason being is because Poles is doing his job. He's keeping his cards close to his chest. He's keeping everything close, just like he did last year against Carolina. He's got his poker face on. And this is how, okay, getting into Nomad's podcast, this is a testament to what's going on in Chicago, the culture, everything. There's been no leaks at all as to what's going on. There's been no leaks at all as to what we're doing. Nobody knows what we're doing. And I agree with you, Michael, wholeheartedly. This guy right here behind you and I, that's on our wallpaper, number one, I believe he's going to be under center leading the team. But Poles and company cannot say that, because if you want to get the haul that you're looking for and trade back in and get the most that you can, the most juice out of your, fruit, that's what you got to do, brother. You got to keep it tight. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's what's going on here. And the national media is feeding off of this. Now, if they get another story that's bigger than us, they will cancel us faster than the word of God and move right over to that other, city, because they don't care nothing about the Chicago Bears. They just got a story, and right now it's working, and they're going to beat this up all the way until the cows come home in April, Michael. So we got to, like you said, we got to set it, forget it, and just deal with the noise, but don't let it get to us. You know what I mean?
I'm going to throw a draft scenario at you,
okay,
and tell me what you think.
I'm excited. Let's do it.
All right. The Bears trade out of number 1 for number 2 with Washington.
Okay, I like that.
Washington gives them pick 2 and the 36th pick in round 2. Okay. And some other picks, whether it's in 24 or 25.
Yeah.
The Bears then trade back with the Chargers and give them the number 2 pick for number 5. And they end up with number 5 and 37. Okay. And then they trade the 9th pick in the draft to the Raiders and grab the Raiders picks in 24 for the 13th pick overall, the 44th pick overall, and the 77th pick overall. That would give Ryan Poles 8 picks in the top 110 of 24. They would have 5, 13, 36, 37, 44, 75, 77, and 110. And that doesn't even count the rest of the draft at the back end.
Yeah, and next year's draft, and then 26 potentially too. You could really get into that. And I will tell you this much. I like exactly what you said. I like what you're thinking. I had similar reservations, but I did look at Adam Schefter says it starts. He would go in with a minimum of 2 to 3 first-round draft picks for Washington to move from number 2 to number 1. And, I was like, okay, 2 to 3. So potentially that would be this year's, potentially next year's, and then the following years, just for starters. That doesn't mean we're going to sprinkle in a second round here, a second round there, and a veteran player to be named later, maybe 4 or 5 picks just off of the first. Now you're talking about getting all of those. Well, you were just talking about 2, but you did mention on the back end that we potentially would get more draft picks later on, but you didn't go into detail. So you're saying similar to what Adam Schefter's saying. I think we can actually get one more first round draft pick out of these guys. Not saying it's going to be this year, because most teams only have one first-round draft pick this year. So that kind of goes without saying. But now you're going to potentially go from number 1 to number 2, then number 2 to number 5. I mean, you're force multiplying this thing, baby. I like what you're doing. This is you're speaking my love language. We're filling all kinds of holes, saving all kinds of money. You're talking about and now you got to put a little bit more money away, because that's okay. You said save about, what was it, 14.5 million for the draft. But that's all right. We can get by with that, because then that means that some of the other, aging players or players that we might be able to trade away for a compensation pick or something like that, or whatever. I like what you're saying. And then also from 5 to 9, and then trade number 9 away, and then go to mid 13. I mean, that could happen, baby. And you know what? Here's what I do like about this draft. They've been saying that in the top 20 picks, 6 quarterbacks are going to be taken. So there's going to be 6 teams that are going to be trying to give everything that they got in order to get they feel is their guy to lead their franchise quarterback, So, hey, man, this is great. I mean, we could be setting ourselves up, Michael, for the next 3 to 4 years. I mean, and look at the fact that Poles already has draft picks set aside for us next year and the year after, and now we're going to force multiply these. I like what I was thinking the Patriots, but for whatever reason, my guys last night, they didn't like us trying to trade away with the Patriots. I'm like, well, Belichick's gone. I mean, it's whatever. But they're like, no, they're the ones that potentially could ruin the draft for people trying to, because they could, lowball, whatever. And I'm like, okay, whatever. They're like, we feel like, yeah, we want to go ahead and get a close trade, draft pick. I forgot where they said, but I want to say it was with the Raiders. No, the Giants. So I was hoping, yeah.
There's so many different scenarios out there. Yeah. The scenario that you were talking about with your guys last night, I believe that was actually proposed on NBC Sports, and it was they take a quarterback at 1. That pick was Caleb in this particular case. Yeah. And then they trade Fields in their 9th overall to New England to move up to 3 and grab Marvin Harrison, and then get some other compensation from New England as well. But that was the big shocker of a mock draft on NBC Sports within the last couple of days.
See, now that bothers me a little bit, because I don't think that if you're going to trade away out of Williams and you're going to give up Fields, you're potentially still going to bring a rookie in here. You're going to be setting us back. I know Fields already, he knows these players. He knows us. He knows the culture. He knows Chicago. We're not going to change everything up. There's going to be some ripples and stuff, right, Michael? But for the most part, it's going to be as seamless as possible transition into what we have with Waldron and whatnot. But it's still going to be the same style, like West Coast type offense, right, Michael? So we're not really going to have a big change in him, but hopefully we get it right, because 3 offensive coordinators in 3 years, I mean, we're really doing him an injustice. But at the same point in time, we don't want to be doing this all over again with a new kid. So I don't agree with that trade, because I think if we're not getting a Caleb Williams or potentially that quarterback out of LSU or something like that, I don't see us having a better year. And like you said earlier in this podcast, I mean, bro, we already had 7 wins, so and the thing of it is we can get a whole lot more this year. I was looking at the schedule. To me, it looks better, and I know it's going to be better. I will share something with you, Michael. I don't know if I told you already, but when I had Tommy Harris on here last week, a lot of people are wasting a draft pick on a 3 technique at the defensive line. He says the guy Gervon Dexter that we already have. I mean, this is Tommy Harris talking. he said that he already believes in Gervon, and he believes that this is the guy. This is our third technique. We're good. He wants to see more serviceable defensive linemen and edge rusher, defensive end, edge rusher type, safety, address the offensive line, give Fields more weapons. That's what he was talking about. And I'm like, okay, how am I going to argue with, Tommy Harris, So if he sees what he likes in Gervon, I did see him step up. I seen him change. I know a lot of people were worried early on because coming out of Florida, he was coming out of this scheme, Michael, where he had to read and react and kind of not really fire off the ball. So they were kind of hesitant as to what he could potentially do, because at that 3 technique, you're the spark plug. You're the one that you're the Mongo that just takes off, and makes everybody, you force multiply those pass rushers to come in, and now you're doubling up 2-3 guys on you, and I could see that happen with Gervon, man. So I'm pretty confident in what his assessment is, what's your thoughts about that?
Dexter absolutely exploded in the last 4 or 5 games of the year. Okay. Developing a continuity. We've talked about continuity several times, and just in the brief time that we've been on together, between him and Billings, and of course Montez Sweat.
You said 4 or 5 games. That's 4 or 5 games. So that's when Sweat came on the scene. So potentially that might also have been what helped him do what he could do. Do you feel, is that where you were going? I'm sorry to cut you off.
That's okay. Hey, we're all friends here, man. There's no apologies, no apologies.
Got me thinking.
But Sweat came in, after like week 8. So he had about 9 weeks with the Bears, and Dexter really, really improved his game in the last half of the year. And I think that they're just another edge rusher opposite Sweat away from really having a top 5 defensive line in the NFL next year.
Now we have Michael Holotek, GM, sitting at the table going into free agency in March. Are you looking at filling that need through free agency, or are you looking through the draft? What are you going to do? Who's your target?
Again, I don't have the notes in front of me, but the kid, the Verse, the edge rusher, his last name is Verse. That's the guy I think that they might be targeting for
out of the draft.
The guy's just an absolute monster in the draft.
Okay. So you actually think that we can get a edge rusher that would be productive out of the draft because we already have a veteran leader on the other side of the ball, so we don't have to go get a edge rusher out of the free agency at a much higher cost. Is that what you're saying, or?
That's exactly what I'm saying, because that's what Ryan Poles, his MO is building through the draft and filling with free agents where needed. And he's also going for youth. So if you take a look at the available free agents, anybody that is 29 or 30, you pretty much have to take off your list right away because they're too old for Poles. He wants to go with youth. So they got to be 25, 26, 27 years old in order for Poles to be interested in them. He was criticized for that last year, but the proof's in the pudding, man. Brandon, look at what he did to rebuild that defense in just one off season.
Unbelievable. I mean, honestly, I wish we could have had a whole lot better of and I hate saying this because we're feeling good right now, right? But I like, how we had all of that positive mojo coming out of Sweat. I wish we could have done that with Claypool, because that second round draft pick for Claypool and over in Miami, he's still not even played it down yet. I don't know what happened there, but you can't hit everything. You can't bat 1,000. You know what I mean? And in Major League Baseball, you're swinging the bat, you're batting 300, and you're doing a great job. You know, you're leading the league. So I think he's doing a great job, whatever. And I think he's going to learn from that mistake. And if I'm not mistaken, Michael, I think this is the type of guy that really pisses him off, and watch to see what he does next. You know what I mean? I think maybe he makes it up, Michael. Maybe he makes it up by going and getting your, MJH, you know what I mean? Or a guy like that, you know?
Yeah, that's, I think everybody talks about Harrison, and rightfully so, but there's some really, really exceptional quality receivers in this draft with Odunze and with Neighbors, and maybe a little bit later in the draft with Franklin. So it's going to be interesting to see, because I don't think that Poles is going to draft only one wide receiver. I think he'll go for two and double dip in that department.
So you're going to go ahead and go get two receivers. Yeah, I kind of agree with you. I like that. I mean, we've already got our alpha in the building, with DJ Moore, and I think he could really make those other guys shine. And I don't know where you're talking about, whether we get him in the first round, second round, or later rounds or whatever, but I would kind of like to see us maybe you're done with him or whatever. But Darnell, you think he's done? You think he's extended his welcome, or do you think we could give him another chance at a low rate?
Well, he's still on the roster, I believe, for 24. I don't think he's a free agent, is he? I don't know. But there's nothing wrong with giving Mooney, if he's a free agent, giving him a 1-year prove it deal, because he's got a new offensive coordinator, and he's got a new wide receivers coach. And let's face it, the wide receiver coach did a piss poor job in his tenure with the Chicago Bears, because aside from DJ Moore, which was already a top tier talent, none of the other wide receivers in his entire time here developed into anything.
Can I ask you, is there anything in particular, or are you just speaking from like a broad approach, or is there something specific that you saw or know about with the coach that didn't have the intangibles to make this receiving core work?
Great question. It's a personal opinion.
Okay.
But it's an opinion based on what I'm seeing and reading, on Twitter and websites, that the Bears needed a change at wide receiver coach, and they got one. And if they can get through to Darnell Mooney, could look at what Darnell Mooney did his rookie year. That first game against the Rams, which was on prime time, and he put a double move on Ramsey, left him at the line of scrimmage, and unfortunately Trubisky overthrew him. That would have been a 90-yard touchdown.
Pause. This is what I'm talking about, guys. This is why you got to get on Windy City End Zone and watch this man. He has forgotten more about football than I'll ever learn. I've already forgotten about that play, but it's like we're going to church right now. I believe everything he's saying. And I was pretty sure I was the idiot in the bar that was standing up, getting all excited about it and everything. And and that's probably what it was, what, led me to believe about Mooney being our potential number 2 at that time. For me, he was like our number 1 receiver, because we didn't have nothing. And now at this point, I'm looking at, could we at least, keep him in the building and him be our potentially 4th, 5th best receiver and make him work his way back to number 3 slot or something. I don't know. I think he could do a lot better job. Hopefully this guy that, came in Waldron can get something out of him, and he could work with the receiver coach. What do you know about this receiver coach, Michael?
I don't know anything about him other than the fact that he's been talked up well by the press and by the Bears organization and by Waldron. So I'm excited to see what he can do. To answer your question that we posed a couple of minutes ago, we were wondering about what Chase Claypool did when he shuffled off to Miami. 7 targets, 4 receptions, 26 yards.
Jeez.
That was all Claypool managed to do in that offense for Miami.
Wow.
Case closed.
Yeah. Jeez. I can't believe that. And you would think that with here's the deal. He didn't even have to be number 1 over there. He didn't even have to be number 2. So you think he would have potentially got more, you think we would have thought he would have did better. You know what I'm saying? I thought, 7 targets and 20 yards.
Yes, 7 targets, 4 grabs, 26 yards.
Michael, I think you could have done better with 7 targets. Beyond,
I'm too old and too slow now.
I'm very slow, but I'm 6'6". If I fall forward or you push me forward from my back forward, I can get us a few yards, each time. So
I was fast when I was back in high school. I ran a 3.5 30-yard dash.
Woo, baby, 3.5.
3.5 in a that's only 30 yards. That's only 30 yards.
Yeah.
But football wasn't my sport. Baseball was.
Oh, really? That's awesome. Yeah, it's cool to see how many of these guys transcend from being like, Fields, Jim Miller, quarterback Jim Miller, all these different guys that played baseball and football. And Jim loves baseball. And I asked him, like our 3rd podcast in together when we were doing it live, I says, hey, Jim, have you ever heard the old saying that football players want to be basketball players and basketball players want to be football players, but everybody wants to be a baseball player? And he goes, huh? He goes, you know who said that? And I said, who? He goes, a baseball player. But what interesting thing about Jim Miller is he threw in the mid to high 90s as a pitcher. He was very fast and he did really good. And I think he was drafted 3 times. He said he was drafted 3 times in the MLB draft. So it was really cool to talk to him about both sports, man. So
now you're taking me to school. I did not know any of that.
He was telling me about this rope swing his dad had out there, and he was throwing through it and all this really cool stuff. I'm the type of guy, I'm not going to be the smartest guy in the room. I'm the guy that you want to sit back, have a beverage with, and talk sports and have a good time. That's the guy you got in front of you right now, So you're the guy that I bring on that I want people to learn from. So we complement each other. You know what I mean? So
well, I really appreciate that. It's I've been a Bear fan. I mean, I can go all the way back to 1963, and back all the way up until the 70s or early 80s. Home games were blacked out in the Chicagoland area. And as a kid of 6 years old, sitting in my basement, hunkered down with a radio, listening to Jack Brickhouse and Irv Kupcinet call the NFL championship game that when they beat the New York Giants 14-10, George Halas's very last championship before he retired after the 68 season. It just all the stuff, man. The first game I remember going to was a game against the Rams in the mid 60s. And Benny McCrae intercepted a pass from Roman Gabriel and ran it back from the end zone all the way out near midfield. And I thought damn for sure that it was going to be a pick six. And I was excited as all get out. And I was maybe 8 years old at the time. And, just a lot of fun. I sat It's at Wrigley Field for the very last game the Bears ever played at Wrigley Field in 1970, a 35-17 victory over Green Bay. I was at the very first game at Soldier Field when they beat Pittsburgh. So there's a lot of trivia between the 6 inches between my ears. And I just enjoy sharing it with people.
Well, I'll tell you what, next time I have you on, I would like to do some Holotech. Let's find a creative name for some trivia with you, and bring a couple questions and see if we can get the chat a little bit more livelier than it is today, and get them to answer some of your trivia questions. But I just got an order from my daughter. She needs Chipotle for lunch, because if I send her money for DoorDash, it's going to cost me an arm and a leg. So I'm like, let me know what you want. I'll go pick it up and deliver it to your school. She's like, lunch is only from 1 to 2, Dad. I'm like, I'm on it. You
better go take care of that daughter, my friend.
Yeah. She's in school. She's going to school to be an esthetician, and she'll be done in March. Misty's still got to go down there to get her facial from her. My son has already been there, and a couple other people out of my family, and she said she'd have to get 2 tables together, pair side by side, lined up to get my big body on there to get I said, get them in there. Let's go. I'm ready.
If I didn't live too far away, I'd volunteer to come down there too.
Hey, Michael, it was a pleasure, man. Thank you so much. And you have yourself a great TGI Friday.
And let's do this again sometime, whether it's on your channel or mine, huh?
Yeah, I'll come on there. Let me get Missy together. She just got to get through this rough patch with Mongo. I think, what did she say on the phone? A couple weeks, and he'll be back home. So
that is just incredibly great news, and I'm so glad to hear it live, straight from Misty.
Yes, sir. All right, you have a good day.
Thanks, my friend.
Hey, everybody, thanks again for getting on Chicago Sports Podcast. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. And it was a pleasure on this TGI Friday to be hanging out with you guys. Until next time, keep fighting like Mongo with every